Okay, so remember that they're changing my voice. Let's look at the two arguments here. One of them is more American friendly and popular culture in terms of the stated argument of the Constitution and the laws, what have you. And one is more like King George or something. Okay, and fanatic corporate people and Lex Luthor. So my argument is actually American friendly in popular culture, not whatever's going on behind the scenes, right? And their argument is more King George, Lex Luthor, behind the scenes, MK Ultra, fanatic argument, right? Kind of sex cult people who are control freaks. I'm sure you all have seen the countless news clips about these people out there, not just Keith Rainier or Weinstein or Epstein or whatever, right? And Weinstein is like them if he's not in one of those cults, according to the narrative of the media and so on and so forth. Okay, so my argument goes like this. They've been abusing me illegally with their illegal operations for years, and they owe me lots and lots of money. Okay, one can argue they owe me over $1 billion. Maybe they should be $100 million, but it certainly should be at least $10, $15 million, right? I mean, that's very much lowballing, but it allows me to move out and to separate from my family that, my father's been very cordial, so I wouldn't mind coming around once in a while and helping out with a few things, maybe hiring somebody to help them over there. But my older brother, sometimes it's like he means well, but he's such kind of a jerk naturally, no offense to him or anyone else, that it's not good for me, especially after all the harassment I've been through. I hesitate to call it trauma because I'm a very tough person. But I have a certain sensitivity to injustice and set of beliefs that makes it so that it's not logical for me to put up with that abuse when the government owes me money and I should be living on my own. And they've crippled me to a certain degree, making it harder for me to get a job. Okay. And so there's no threat to the government. There's no terrorist threat. I don't even own a firearm. Okay. I'm going to be 43 years old soon. I'm not like a young guy who's in shape, going around beating people up or something. So there's no threat here. There's tons of people that are far more of a threat than I am. There's people on parole. There's people that beat their wives. There's gang members. There's drug dealers. There's drug addicts, on and on and on. Homeless people acting up and they're hardly doing anything. How are you going to leave all that alone and zoom in on me? If that's one of the reasons. It doesn't make any sense. More people die in gang violence in the streets than in terrorist attacks in America. So if you're going to be a national security expert, then you have to prioritize the major problems. And you have to apply the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. And consider who has firearms and who doesn't, and things like this. So the answer here is clearly to compensate me, okay, to stop trying to tell me what to do, because I have the right to pursue happiness and the right to not fall in line with the military orders, the political orders, the governing class, whatever social orders. I have a right to not have to fall in line with them. And all of you have sworn an oath. If you work for those certain institutions, you have sworn an oath in certain groups like the military to uphold the Constitution, not the secret orders behind the scenes. Pretty straightforward, right? Their argument goes like this, that there's a bunch of rich people who will make a big fuss and make people's lives hard if they don't have their way. And a lot of people who work for them have collateral. They've done things that they might go to jail for, and they don't want to risk that. Just like with the drug cartels from, Nicaragua, Venezuela, whatever countries they're from. And I'm sure it's many, many of them by now, with the millions of immigrants have come over here that society refuses to treat fairly and put into a region where they tax them at a higher rate and build tiny homes so they're paying less rent and so they can have the funds and the resources they need to manage them. And a lot of these people are hardworking people. It's easy to do. But their argument is that they must tell me what to do and they must continue to abuse me because that's quote unquote how things work. That's how these people feel better about themselves. Some of them are slightly autistic. Some are extremely sexually sadistic. They have various complexes that they don't want to admit to themselves. Some have some problems similar to bipolar. Some have suffered from fits of psychosis. They have various issues. As you see, the psychologist did a study, right? Certain psychologists, pretty famous study by now, of CEOs, and they found that 1 in 5 CEOs fit the definition, textbook definition of psychopath, and have psychopathic features. Okay, so that's about 20% of them. Okay, and think about Fortune 500 companies by themselves, right? 1 in 5, right? That's 100 CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, okay, give or take, fits the definition of a psychopath. So already you can see that their argument is psychopathic and unreasonable, because it just takes one psychopath and a committee having his way to a certain point before the policies of the rich are psychopathic. And the Constitution is supposed to protect the marginalized person, it's supposed to protect everyone, especially the marginalized minority, right? It's supposed to give that person his rights. The government's supposed to say, hey, you rich people can't do this to this guy. And you sure as hell can't use the government to help you do it. So as we look at the potential solutions here, society is also supposed to rally and ensure people have rights. It's supposed to ensure them freedom from covert harassment, government, technology, they're supposed to rally to ensure that they aren't harassed by the government. They're supposed to rally to ensure that they have their constitutional rights. They're not supposed to let government, technology, and financial control prevent them from doing so. That's part of what the War on Poverty plan that I've recommended. See my official stance on the War on Poverty plan video. I'll put the link in the description if I remember. If I don't, put it in the comments and I'll put it in the description. Where I recommend a plan that makes sure everyone has a house over their head, a roof over their head, and they have food, okay? And basic medical care is, as it goes in terms of the emergency room, that's always going to be there, right? If you get shot, they're going to take you to the emergency room and they're going to treat you for it, right? So you have a certain amount of medical care, okay? And as it fixes the economy, it should be more affordable for the average middle class, lower class person, what have you, to get health care. Which is not the same as communism, socialism, or Obamacare. It's just a more logical tax rate with more effective spending, cost effective. Tiny homes, small homes. Okay. That would ensure that people aren't scared enough to do what the government says, at least to that degree. So there's still going to be threats to their families and to them, right? But that's where the other part of the plan comes in. A culture war that gets people to be ready to stand firm and actually be brave, to actually make it the land of the brave, where they're brave enough to say to the government, they're going to do what's right, even if you threaten their family, even if you kill their family members or not. You see what I'm saying? That's key here. Make sure everyone's housed, make sure everyone's fed. The rich will still be rich with the plan, what have you. There's other things that are needed to address the power of the rich other than the plan. It's not a communist plan. And it would ensure that people have the tools they need, because they're not all as brave as I am. None of them are as brave as I am. They would have the things that they need in order to become brave and to actually put their foot down and say what they believe and to pursue happiness and to enforce the Constitution. You see what I'm saying? So as we look at the two models, my model is a solution. And people need to do a lot to accomplish it. Okay? And there's a lot of victims of gang stalking or own compensation, but none of them to the degree that I am. Because I'm smarter than they are. I have a top martial arts challenge that proves objectively that it's the most, obviously if you're in martial arts, I'm the top martial arts ever possible. You're true martial arts, hands down. But those who don't know, they can at least say that with an objective test, it's logical to believe that I am. Okay? And there's no reason to believe otherwise. You see what I'm saying? Now, that means that they don't just owe me for, the harassment, the abuse, the threats, the family members that were killed that they took credit for and used to fuck with my head, what have you. They owe me for millions and millions of dollars that I would have had if I was given my rightful place in society. For example, if somebody worked construction and you injured them and they can no longer work and make that money, when they sued the person, that would be considered, how much money did they lose, right? Okay. You don't have to prove that that person would actually do the work and get that money. And so it is with being the top martial artist. Okay. I could potentially, with my religious argument, with my martial art argument, make billions of dollars. So they really owe me over $1 billion conservatively. Okay, if you're looking at a fair judgment, especially look at all the companies that are involved. The company, the city, the state, the sheriff's department, all the different groups, the FBI, okay, the Justice Department, the people I wrote who didn't respond, internal affairs. There's a lot of groups involved, and collectively they can come up with over $1 billion and pay me. And I'm not a materialistic person. These are part of the objective facts that help you come to the unavoidable conclusion that I'm talking sense and they're talking narcissistic, psychopathic, sexual sadist-aligned madness. And on top of this, countless liberals and conservatives are aware of this. Democrats, Republicans, libertarians, what have you. And it is the biggest decision that any of these political groups, any of the genders have ever made, women's biggest decision. It's the biggest decision the conservatives ever have to make, the governing class, etc. And it's a catastrophic failure. They're going to completely bomb that decision. And it's irreversible. Okay, it's going to damn them in an extremely disgraceful manner. And for what? Women's rights by themselves far transcend any perceived gain from them persecuting me. Women's history, women's sum total experience on this planet. When this thing plays out the rest of the way, they'll have shunned the most righteous person that ever lived. And for what? What did they get out of it? So they can say that they followed a bunch of psychopaths and pedophiles at the most important time in history? It defines what's left of humanity as inhuman trash. We have to consider the spectrum. We have to consider what kind of representatives the groups have from the races, from the religions, right? There's Muslims and Christians and Jews aware of this. And not just a few of them, not some random sampling, a major sampling of these groups. Mormons, Catholics, Baptists, Lutherans, somewhere somehow Amish, tons of people, Jews out the wazoo. And they're going to define themselves as complete monsters that didn't stand with the most righteous person that ever lived because they thought being a worm for pedophiles is more important. Because women thought that dating his enemies magically is more important. They thought that a wicked life is better than a long righteous life. They thought that being in submission to evil is greater than being in submission to good. They thought that dating worms who pretend to be good when they're evil is greater than someone who's actually good, who they're trying to convince you is magically evil. They thought that the argument of you're going to die anyway, live the most righteous life you can, magically pales in comparison to the argument that a girl's got to eat. And so what exactly do they end up eating? And I don't mean food. And for whose benefit? And what occurred before that event occurs? So all those females who say, ew, a black guy, ew, a black guy, they have no problem with taking on certain sex slave mentalities where they're sleeping with guys who like anal with men, women, and children. Or should I say adult, so-called adult male, females, and children. No offense to anybody. I originally said in a way that was more offensive perhaps, but this has to be said. They chose having immature, childish, and very filthy and disgusting sex with pure animals over true romantic love with Christ. Who could look at this situation, betray their families more than anyone ever has in human history by defying God and cheating me and not rallying to me, and then date these monsters that aren't men, who refuse to do what's right at the most important time in history? How could I not be extremely angry at them in a way that continues forever and causes them to burn in hell forever?